Welcome to Be Unmessable with the podcast. I'm your host, Josselyne Herman-Saccio, and I'm so excited about my guest today because number one, she's my friend for many years. So that's, one thing I love talking to her. But she's so creative and she has reinvented herself so many times. And she's a singer, she's an actor, she's a songwriter, and she is tearing it up in Nashville now. I'm so proud of her. So let me just bring her on. Noelle Toland, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Jocelyn. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. And, I give a very brief introduction, but if you want to talk a little bit about your journey and, so many people dream of being an artist and you're doing it. So it's a real fulfillment of many people's dreams. And tell us a little bit about how you ended up doing what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm originally from Oregon, small town in Oregon, and I started singing when I was a toddler. And first time I got on stage, I was 5, through my kindergarten choir, and did the talent show thing, and just loved being on stage. And I transitioned into musical theater and did choir throughout my entire schooling up until and throughout college as well, and always just wanted to perform. And that took me to college at Loyola Marymount. I was a history major and a theater minor, and was pursuing the artist life, and always, it was. I'm glad this the subject of this talk is about being unmessable with, because I've encountered so many messable with.
I mean, that's the case, as you know, I manage actors and I have for, I manage you. So, for 20 some odd years. And it is such an industry where it's like if you want to design a pathway to be messed with, this is the perfect career because you're constantly dealing with rejection and, no slow starts and then false starts. And so, yes, talk about that. So there you are.
Yeah, there I am, and getting door after door after door slammed in my face. And this industry, unfortunately, a lot of it, the feedback you get is feedback on yourself. It's not really your work or whatever. But and so if you tend to internalize things and not build essentially leather skin so that you can take criticism, and realize, like, it's not really about you. It's do you fit into this project that you're positioning yourself for, or do you fit into this person's whatever project, film, pilot, music, anything. So I had to really learn how to take myself out of it, out of the rejection, and just keep going forward, and really had to build resilience, and um, and really teach myself that you just have to keep going forward. And when you want something so bad, you will just go, every time that door closes in your face, you're gonna, okay, well, another one that was not right for me. There's a saying I really love called rejection is protection. And that's really helped me a lot, going, okay. And I've noticed it in certain after the fact, because hindsight's 2020, right? Like, if something doesn't happen for you in the moment, because I've had so many rejections, 1,000 to 1 over what I've been, when things have worked out for me. And it isn't until afterwards, with 2020 hindsight, I go, oh, I'm glad that didn't happen, because then I wouldn't be in this position to do this or pursue this opportunity, because I would have been tied up with that or something. So I'm definitely an optimist, and I've learned to cultivate optimism just for the sake of survival. So yeah, this industry of all, is just, it's very difficult. But at the same time, I don't really like to focus on the bad things, or the things that, what you can there's a lot of negative you can focus on. But I like to say, look, if I wanted to be a doctor or a lawyer or any other profession, those professions are equally as competitive. It's just about really finding what your path is in life, and really not comparing it with anyone. And that's so hard in terms of the arts, because we tend to have a creative community of peers, and sometimes when your peers excel at rates that like you're not excelling at, you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? When really it's not about you, it's just this person has a completely different journey. And yeah, there.
And if you think about it, I mean, because I have a like a 30,000 foot view of this with many different artists, your current reality is someone else's next step.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you say comparing yourself, that's one of the things that messes with people in life, period, whether it's comparing yourself to a younger version of you
Yeah.
or comparing yourself to someone else in your life or someone on TV or someone on the radio or something like that. If we
Yeah.
have radios anymore, but it's a lot of times it's comparing yourself to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like some version of yourself you think you should be, like I
Mm-hmm.
should be further along, or I should have gotten that role, or that song should have had more downloads, or whatever it is. And all those shoulds, whether they're on you or another person, can definitely send people down for the count. And what I love about what you're saying is, like, rather than focusing on that, because whatever you focus on is going to manifest in your life, as
Yep.
we've discussed in the past, right? So how do you shift? And this is really what I want to talk to you about, is like, how do you take yourself from those moments where it is like everything is telling you to go down that road of
Mm-hmm.
comparing and surviving and reacting, and then shift into a mode where you're fulfilling on your vision. You're taking actions that, okay, what's the next action? Okay, I
Yeah.
need to mix this song, or I need to write a song, or I need to pick up the guitar, or I need to, whatever it is that's going to keep you fulfilling your vision, versus fixating and myopically focusing on what's wrong or what's
Yeah.
missing.
Yeah. It's all the things you said are so, so true. And I have learned that what you focus on is what you become, and thoughts are things. And you have, one thing is you can't control getting a record deal. You can't control booking a role. Honestly, you can't. You can't control having that casting director say, I like her, I want to bring her back in. You can't control anything. But what you can control is your thoughts. That's the one thing. And I've learned that, doing the landmark with you, one thing I took away from that was like, oh, the stories. I was like, oh, that's so interesting. So that person that had a bad day or that yelled at me at the grocery store, snapped at me, it's not something about me. It's that they're going dealing with something that we have no idea what they're going through. And so learning to not build those stories in your head, which another thing I think that builds off of is taking yourself out of things, like
I
your
think
ego.
that's brilliant. Yeah, and not taking things personally. I
Yeah.
think that would be how I would say it, because it isn't personal, especially when somebody's casting a TV show or a movie. There are 1,000 factors going into who gets that role.
Yep.
And it's very rarely just how talented that person is or how great an audition they get. Very rarely is that the
Mhm.
one factor. In fact, almost never, I would say.
Never. It's, do you fit in that moment what the project needs? It's not about you. And that's one thing one of the myriad things I learned from analyzing a script and for acting class is like, it's not about you, it's about the story. So do you serve the story? And that's what the job of the director, the casting director, the writers, that's their job. It's not about, oh great, she's a great actress, but like, does she fit in this character? Or do you, for a job interview, if you're interviewing for a job, it's not about how amazing you did at the interview. It's just, it could come down to like, does she fit well with the people that are already here? Or can we just,
Exactly.
yeah.
Same thing with with an acting role. Is she
Mhm.
too tall for the leading man? I mean, you're 5'9", and some of these people are 5'7", and does that work?
Yeah.
Or is she too Nordic looking, or whatever? To be, because the mother is more olive skinned, or whatever. It's so random
Hmm.
and not personal.
Yeah.
And I love, actually, it's not about you. Could be your theme, because now it's interesting. I'm getting moved to think about it, but like one of the things that I've heard you say is that how you get over your nervousness is to focus on the
Hmm.
audience. It's not
Hmm.
about you. It's
Yep.
about what you're providing and how you're impacting that group of people, and that is a perfect kind of mantra for you.
Yeah, I love that. And one thing I watched this amazing documentary by Ken Burns. I've seen most of his documentaries, but one thing I love, he did one on country music, and which obviously, I'm a huge country music fan and just always been obsessed with the genre. And there was this anecdote I loved about when Minnie Pearl auditioned for the Grand Ole Opry. The person who was behind the stage with her could tell she was very nervous and just shaking uncontrollably. And they whispered to her and they said, "Honey, just love them and they'll love you right back." And it went on to say that was some of the best advice that she could have ever received. And she went on to give that advice to others. And, you know, um, I'm obviously nerves are, we all have them, but it takes practice to overcome them. But one thing I've learned is that kind of attitude and taking myself completely out of it and just going like, it's not about me. It's about, and I'm sure you understand this too, like when you're giving a speech and talking to thousands of people, that like it's not about really you, it's about what they need, and they're part of the dance. Like you have to have that, like they're part of it. So when you think about that, for me, it totally helped with my nerves. Like I just played the Bluebird Cafe on Sunday, made my Bluebird Cafe debut, which was,
So exciting.
God, I mean, it's just amazing. And it's such an iconic venue and it's so intimate because I think sometimes it's easier to perform in front of lots of people because you don't really see a face. But when that little room, there's like less than 100 people and there's people literally inches from your face. So it's kind of daunting. And I remember, but right before I went on, I was like, I'm just going to have fun. And this is about them. This is about just them having a good night and they want me to do well and it's going to be fun. And it ended up being amazing. Like it was one of those moments where I think for the rest of my life, I know for the rest of my life, I'll remember of just feeling like I feel where I'm supposed to be is doing this.
Yeah, like at home.
Mm-hmm.
Is beautiful. And I remember back in the old days when I was a singer, that was the thing. I mean, and I played, places where it was 100,000 people, places where it was 100 people.
Yeah.
And if your attention is on yourself, and I think this is important for anybody, whether you're an artist or you're in a business meeting and you're doing a presentation or whatever you're doing, if your attention is on over here on you, you have limited power and impact,
Mm-hmm.
because then it's all about how are people seeing me? What do they think about me? Do I seem stupid? Do I seem smart? Do I, like, am I competent or whatever, all that imposter syndrome stuff that can get to people. But if your attention is fully out here on the person, you're gone.
Mm-hmm.
You disappear. That's what I would liken to being in the zone as an athlete.
So true. 100%. It's like that, the state of flow, what they call. And it really is. And that goes into, that translates into, I think, every area of your life in terms of healthy living and having a healthy mindset. If you're really thinking about how do I contribute to my community, how do I contribute to my household, how do I contribute to the community of life of everyone, like when you think about position things that way, it really just dissipates stress and anxiety, and it makes you, it just, when you just think about others, it's such a more joyous and healthy place to live is the best way.
Yeah, I well said. I mean, and if I think about being messable with versus being unmessable with, part of that space of being unmessable with is you're not there. What's there
Mhm.
is your vision, which is about impacting other people almost always, from what I've discovered with people over the last 900 years of working with people, is that ultimately their vision is to have some sort of impact, whatever that is. It's not
Right.
about a house or a car or a vacation, or, I mean, those are goals. That's nice, but that's not really the vision. Like
Hmm.
at the end of your life, okay, you had that house, you had that car. So what?
Yeah. It's not about things. You can't take what was it Denzel said, you can't take a hearse or a U-Haul with a hearse when you go.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff is going back. All your stuff is going to be someone else's stuff at some point. So now what? What's the legacy you're leaving? And let me ask you that. What is the legacy you want to leave with people? I know right now it's through your music or your acting, but those are just vehicles. What's the vision?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've always thought to myself that the message behind my work and that I hope comes through with everything I do, and not just with my songwriting, my music, my acting, the stories I tell, and just who I am whenever I meet someone in person, or have dinner with someone, or with anybody. My goal is always to make people feel less alone, because I've experienced that, and have experienced the depths of feeling, in despair, and not feeling like I can put one foot in front of the other. So I know what it's like. And I always have just wanted to make people feel like it's going to be okay, and not in a pedantic way, not in a way that's condescending, because like I'm the least person that's perfect, or there's no such thing as that, as perfect. But I've always just wanted to lead with light, and to make people feel better, however that may be. Um and that's why I've gravitated towards the arts so much, is that connection to story. And I think storytelling is the one thing that connects us all as humans, not just humans, with my dog. I tell her stories and she's like, okay, that was a nice
She
story,
is a captive audience, but yes.
especially when I have treats.
That's right, exactly.
So that's one thing. If I were to leave a legacy behind, it would be, I would want for people to feel less alone through my art.
And let me ask you, let me take it another level, right? Because less alone is still sort of a little bit in the reaction space. So if people felt less alone, what would be available to them then? Like, what do you really want? If they're less alone, then what?
Yeah, I was maybe connected.
Yeah, that's what I was hearing from when you were talking. I was like, it's something about being connected, isn't it?
Yeah, I think connection is vital to human nature. And when you feel disconnected and you feel isolated, it can lead to so many bad negative emotions. But when you feel connected to someone, there's so much positive energy in that feeling, because you feel like you're not alone. You feel like, I'm maybe things aren't so bad, or someone understands me. I think that it's all
That's
in that.
it too. Yeah. So it's like connection and understanding is sort of the vision. And right now you're using your art to get there or come from there and
Yeah.
be there. But you could do that at Starbucks. You don't even
Yeah.
have to be singing or acting. So that's what I love about vision is it's expressible and fulfillable at any moment with anyone at any time if that's your game.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
And what do you think is like in the arts, what do you think is the biggest thing that messes with people and has them give up on their dream?
It's confidence. It's
Mhm.
feeling like you're not good enough, you're not talented enough. And I've definitely felt those feelings. And having that, and I think that kind of ties into fear, right? Where oh, I'm fearful to get on stage, or I'm fearful to go to this audition, or I'm fearful to take that step and just jump in, which I think fear, I'm no psychologist, but um,
You're
fear.
not? You have a lot of books behind you. You look
I
like
know,
maybe you are a psychologist. I'm like, and you have like diplomas and stuff. Are those yours?
my writing awards actually.
That's
I didn't
great.
I was gonna put him over there, but I have nowhere to put him on that side. So I was like, I might as well just put him on my bookcase.
No, I love it.
But fear, I think, goes back to what we were talking about thinking about yourself.
I think
And
you're right. Yeah, spot on.
and I think sometimes when that fear dissipates, when you just think about the other person you're talking to, um, or the audience member that's in front of you, and then you're kind of just not really fearful anymore, because that's just kind of from my experience. So
Yeah. No, I concur. So is there anything you want to leave people with, like either tip or a strategy that you've used that's really supported you in staying true to your vision? Because that's a lot of what I call being unmessable with. It's not about being tough. It's about being able to take actions from your vision versus react to whatever life is throwing at you, whether
Yeah.
it's circumstances or, feedback or whatever it is, like rejection, as you said.
Yeah,
What's helped you?
that's a great question. It's going to tie into what we've been talking about, but one thing I like to do is always putting yourself in the other person's shoes. I think that totally resolves conflict. And I'm again, no psychologist, but I do read a lot and I love learning and growing. And one of my favorite books is To Kill a Mockingbird. And in that book, Scout talks about putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Or I think it was her dad, her Finch, who tells her that. But I'm totally misquoting it. But I remember that message.
Whatever. The point is.
Yeah, the point was just you can step out of someone's shoes and you see things differently. And another thing that ties into that is um, uh, with my working on storytelling and trying to write compelling stories, one thing I have learned is that a great story is not necessarily, but isn't right versus right. It's not good versus evil. That can be in a children's book sometimes where it needs to be condensed into a digestible form. But the best stories tend to be right versus right, where each person has their side is justified in a way where they feel like they can die fighting for that. And so I've found that the resolution to conflict is seeing that from the other person's side. When okay, well, what is if we're having a conflict? If I look at the other person and go, okay, well, I can see it from their side, and they're really tired, and they I don't know what the conflict could be, but it's really anything, bank teller, or you're trying to get a loan or something. Putting yourself in another person's shoes is it's invaluable advice, and I've learned that it's helped me a lot. And
Sounds like you should write a song about it.
I know, right? Maybe I
Yeah,
will.
I think that could be a great song.
Yeah. So yeah, I think going back to your question, it's going outside yourself, because that just really helps with a lot of things. So taking a deep breath and thinking about other people is a great way to approach things.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm so glad that you were able to do this. And, is there a place where people can find you and your music and everything that you're up to?
Yeah, my website, it's my name, noelletoland.com. So everything's there. And I'm also very active on social media, on Instagram at Noelle Toland, on all the X/Twitter.
I'll put all those links in the show notes so that people can just click easily to find you. But we're excited about what's coming from you, upcoming from you. And, thank you so much for, being on the show and just being my friend. And I love you so much. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Be Unmessable with the podcast. I never take for granted that you've chosen to spend some time with me, and I am committed that you get value every time you do. So if you want to develop your unmessable with muscle to create life versus react to it, click below in the show notes and we will get you into our free promise game process that will enable you to start creating what you want versus waiting for what you want. I look forward to hearing back from you on what you're creating, as well as future topics for the show that might support you in being unmessable with. See you next time.